Hey everyone, it is 1 o'clock in the East. It is 10 a.m. in the West. It is Friday, June 9th. This is a special edition of the strategy session here at Resolute Square. Joining me today are the one, the only, the host of the Enemies List podcast, Rick Wilson. Rick, welcome.
Hey, Reed.
And joining us from a secret, undisclosed location, author of It Was All a Lie and longtime political strategist, Stuart Stevens. Stuart, welcome.
Thank you, buddy. Good to be here.
All right, gents. Well, the reason we're here is obvious. Yet again, Donald Trump was indicted, or has been indicted. Will be arraigned on Tuesday in Miami at the federal courthouse there. As we understand it now, there are 7 counts related to the handling. I'm going to call it. Well, we should say mishandling of documents at Mar-a-Lago. That was what was that summer of? Was that last summer or summer of 21? I don't know. They all
21.
It was
21.
Summer of 21, the infamous raid, right? He did nothing wrong. He had the right to declassify these documents. The story has changed as many times as Trump's skin tone. So, Rick, give us your initial impressions.
Look, I know everybody wants this to be the great moment of triumph, but I've just been to this rodeo too many times. There are still many a slip between the cup and the lip, as they say. And I don't want people to get ahead of their skis on this yet, because he has been indicted. Many people can get indicted. A grand jury can indict a ham sandwich, as they famously say. But he still has to go to trial. It will be in Miami, which is not a good venue. Miami is a very, very, very dangerous place to try public corruption cases, because their standard of public corruption is very, very, very low. They really don't care about it as much there. And the juries down there are going to be very MAGA. I'm worried about that. I'm trying to be realistic. I hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Stuart, how about you?
Listen, I think the key test here is, are Republicans going to continue to say that they'll back Trump if he's the nominee? And
So
as
far,
far as I know, I haven't seen anybody say, "Well, I'm not." People who weren't for him before, like Romney, put out a great statement, and everybody else seems to be kind of saying, "Well, yeah, we sort of believe in the rule of law, but it's too bad if it applies to us." So I don't know. I mean, I think this could be really, really bad for Republicans if they stick by somebody who, I think more and more people are going to begin to think, you get 8, 9 indictments, maybe 3 different jurisdictions. Maybe there might be something there. So we'll see.
Well, I said this was it last night, that the idea here is that if you're Chris Christie, this is a one-way political mission for you. And it's really not about winning the nomination. It's really about reputational repair, such as he can do it. And he's also a former U.S. attorney, who put Jared Kushner's father in prison, it should be remembered. So he could come out and say, he could take a very rule of law perspective. Mike Pence, again, who, Trump was willing to allow him and his family to die on January 6th, I think could make a very compelling argument why this is just continued bad behavior from someone who shouldn't be in office anymore. And then Ron DeSantis, who is, I guess, in quote unquote second place, for whatever that means, would seem to be the guy who could, who has been willing to attack Trump, such as it is. And all of them, begged off, Rick. They all, like, whatever semblance of spinal column they had disappeared as quickly as Trump could tap out on Truth Social.
Reed, this was, and we were talking about this yesterday. This is exactly what we would have seen in 2016 if this had happened, or some variation. Their consultants all go whisper to reporters, "Hey, listen, my guy's the normal guy. He's going to be the one that can get the Trump voters, but still win. And this is the thing that's going to kill Trump. His support will all fade away now." And they said it to themselves in 16. They're saying it to themselves again now. And the real question, I think, in this whole thing is not so much about what does this illuminate about Trump's criminality. We know that guy's a criminal. He's always been a criminal. He's a criminal from head to toe. As Stuart said, it's what it illuminates about the Republican Party. They will defend themselves. They will defend him at the cost to their own integrity, their own honor, their own campaign chances, because they know Trump runs the party. He controls the base. No one else has even a semblance of a shred, of a scintilla of the power he has over the base. And look, I think the primary campaign ended already. I think it's been done for a while. All this is just Jeff Rowe trying to scam $200 million out of Ron DeSantis and a few other super PACs, with
Well,
their people trying to get a beach house.
I wouldn't say a million. I would say, let's don't, let's give the guy some respect here, man. Yeah. But here's the thing, guys. They still have this rule that they're going to make anybody who will be in a debate say that they'll support the nominee.
Yep.
So, I mean, look, I know Chris Christie. I worked for him. I did all his races. I can't imagine Chris Christie saying that. And yet, the only chance Chris Christie really has to get any visibility here is in the debates.
Well, he did say that he did say he would sign the pledge to get on the debate stage, and then he'll reconsider next year. So I think he has has left himself a door open, but who knows? But so Rick, here's the thing, Kevin McCarthy, right, who famously blamed Trump for January 6th, and then a week later absolved him by going to Mar-a-Lago, right, to stand with the
thumbs up picture.
With the thumbs up picture. All of the congressional Republicans, I would say House Republicans, really, the Taliban 20, right, are all over this. It's deep state. It's the DOJ. They're already attacking Jack Smith.
Soros prosecutors.
Right. In the New York Times last night, Rick, Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan laid out, obviously been given to him by La Savita or whoever, that, they already have a plan. They already dropped an ad, basically comparing Jack Smith, the prosecutor, to a wolf. Right. Which actually, I would have made it like a coyote.
Call me a wolf, dude. I'd love it. Yeah,
I would have called. I would have made a coyote or badger or something. But a wolf is
vulture. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. But they've already said that they're going to attack the prosecution, the DOJ, Garland, the FBI. And so,
absolutely,
whatever line, this is to your point about magical thinking, whatever line we think exists, it hasn't for now 8 years.
Look, all these people who on the left right now, and I want to give some tough love here. All these people on the left right now who are like, this is it, it's the one, it's final. It's not done till the guy's in jail, and he is the devil's luck. He's gotten out of so many of these things so many times that I think you have to be really realistic and not expect Merrick Garland and the rest of the DOJ to deliver the campaign for you. Because look, folks, let's be real. They said that we don't want to do this close to a primary. Okay. He gets indicted on Tuesday in court. They're going to, at least even a half-competent lawyer is going to delay it 30, 45 days, maybe more. If they get this stooge judge that loves Trump, it could be much more. She could give him 90 days or 180 days or push it off till a year from now, for all we know. And by the time that they get into actually prosecuting Trump, you're going to be in the middle of campaign season. He's going to continue to rise in the polls, solidify his base behind him. And then at some point, guys, I have this fear. Everybody thinks Merrick Garland is a tough guy. I don't. I think he's going to cave. I think they're going to say, well, it's too close to the campaign. We'll have to pick it up later. So I am not sanguine about this.
So let's talk about lawyers, Stuart. So yesterday, Trump had three attorneys on his defense team. As of this morning, they have both left, and he's kept one of them on. And so this is sort of the rotating cast of characters, right? Which is, throughout his presidency, throughout his life, right? I did Michael Cohen's podcast this morning. He's always had a band of lawyers, but now he's gotten rid of two of them. My sense is they said, Mr. President, this is a serious thing. You got to stop screwing around. And he told him to scram, right? So now it'll be yet another rotating cast. They'll tell him, like, you can't bash the system. You can't bash the prosecutor. You can't do this. You can't do that. And he'll just keep firing lawyers until he finds one that he thinks can do the job. But this is not an impeachment trial, right? Like, this is real life federal courtroom with a real life world-class prosecutor. And I have to assume that they wouldn't have done this but for the idea that they thought, again, with Rick's admonition, that in front of as impartial a jury as you can find, that they've got this guy dead to rights.
Yeah, and look, guys, I recently reread the transcript of the conversation that Trump had with Raffensperger in Georgia. Mm-hmm. And that is, to me, that has been the best case all along. Because, if that isn't like election interference, that was the whole purpose of the call.
Right.
He say like overturn this election and give me votes. And
Right.
at one point, Cleta Mitchell picks up the phone because she thinks that Trump isn't doing a good enough job explaining that they're supposed to break the law.
Right.
And, which got her fired from her big white shoe law firm.
Which
Um,
We helped.
so,
which we definitely helped
yeah,
on.
which we helped. We'll take a little credit for that. But I think I can't imagine they're not going to indict him in Georgia. And to me, again, that is a slam dunk case. It is. How do you say this is an election interference? So this guy's going to need one lawyer to deal with New York, or one set of lawyers. He's going to need one set of lawyers to deal with this. He's going to need another set of lawyers to deal with Georgia. All different jurisdictions, all very different cases.
Right.
So Rick, three of the prosecutors in the jurisdictions that Stuart or the Attorney General in New York. So Tish James, Alvin Bragg, Fani Willis, all happen to be African American, right? We saw when Bragg indicted him, right? We saw the vitriol that came out of that, right? And we'll see the more out of Tish James, and then we'll see this out of Fani Willis. And then on the federal side, again, it's the deep state, the corrupt DOJ, right? They're all in on it. They've all been after Trump, since the get-go. Remember when he was running and he attacked a federal judge who was, happened to be of Latino descent, right? About his beliefs. And so this
he called him a Mexican, and he was born in Indiana.
Right.
Yeah.
So and as we know, Stuart, too, facts have never been, Trump's strong suit. So Rick, take us into the ugliness of the strains that we will see. Again, we've got Miami, the feds on Tuesday, but, Fani Willis will be coming down here sometime, we think, this summer too.
Well, you've already got the MAGA world doxing and attacking Jack Smith's wife, who had the temerity to be a registered Democrat. So they've turned her into, Hillary Clinton 2.0, Soros shill, the whole thing. And you're going to see the racial animus that was very, very present in Trump's many, many statements about Alvin Bragg, calling him an animal. That's a subtle code word, Donald. No one can figure out what you're trying to say. Right. And you're going to see that in all these cases. But, to Stuart's point, Trump has a lot of bullets being shot at him right now, a lot of gunfire coming in from different angles. But again, I caution people not to think any of these single cases will change the political dynamic of the Republican Party. It may help us at the Lincoln Project peel away a few more soft Republicans in the general, but for the most part, you're going to see he will have as much money as he needs to try these cases. He can throw money at it all day long, and that's a real advantage in any kind of case like this. Even if he's a bad client, there are always lawyers who will go and sign up to throw his money on their beach house fund.
If they get paid.
If they get paid. You're also going to see, I think, as the political dynamics comes to a frozen point in time, it's going to be harder and harder to get a good jury in any of these cases. Because remember, it only takes one MAGA idiot to throw the whole thing. It only takes one sleeper to go into any of these juries, and Trump walks away. And if he gets free from any one of these things, he'll start declaring revindication. He'll start pushing harder to push all of them away or into the far future. And I just think it's important to remember that none of the Republicans are going to save you. There are no normal Republicans out there. And I don't think the Democrats are ready for this gigantic tidal wave of propaganda and lies and bullshit that is going to come from the House, from James Comer, from Jim Jordan, from Kevin McCarthy, from Elise Stefanik, pretending that Joe Biden is somehow involved in some sort of criminal scheme, which is a joke and a lie. But they will treat it as reality. Fox was all in for Trump again last night. I just feel like we're not fully ready on the pro-democracy side to get anything but a great outcome. There are a lot of less great outcomes that are possible here.
Well, Stuart, I emailed an attorney friend of ours and just asked, is there anything that prevents someone who's a convicted felon from running for office or serving? And they wrote back, no. In fact, the only thing that would be if you had been a seditionist under the 14th Amendment. So, yes. There's a long way to go here. And, Lyndon LaRouche ran for president from prison several times, right? I think Eugene V. Debs did too.
Yeah, 3 times for LaRouche from prison.
Right. So, to Rick's point, I think that we need to think about this in the context of this is one more thing, one more big thing in the context of the next 18 months. But the truth is, we still got to beat the guy next November.
Yep.
Yeah, Trump has always been best as an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
And, the problem he had in 20, he had to defend a record. He didn't even know what his, record was. And it placed him like in this very uncomfortable position where like, this is stuff I did and you should vote for me. He was both bragging about the virus cure and saying there wasn't a cure. This is where he wants to be. This is where he was in 15. We should remember that when Trump announced in 15, the guy was getting like, 12, 13%. And Jeb Bush was up at 70, and that reversed itself in a matter of months. So I think this is a comfortable place for Trump. And, in all the races that we did, we all saw that when candidates are in a space that they're comfortable. I mean, why did we, when there wasn't, some decide where to go, why was the default for George Bush to send him to a school? Because he was good there. He liked it. Yep. He knew a lot about education. He felt comfortable. You liked that guy that you saw. And it was easy working with him when you did that. You sent him to a hospital. It was kind of like, why do people get sick? I don't understand this. There's no solution. So we went to a lot of schools.
Right.
And I think the same here with Trump, that when he's running against the system and all of these powerful forces, I think it's very comfortable for him. And look, if you look at that history of right-wing movements, I mean, the great Garrett Gaff Longshadow did that, This is just a variation. They're going to set this up like Ruby Ridge, that here's this system that's out to get this guy. Same thing, direct line to Branch Davidians,
right,
leading to Tim McVeigh. I think the potential for violence here is,
well, that was
greater than it was before.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question to Rick was, so in New York, right? Nobody really showed up for the arraignment, right? Now that, as somebody I was talking to earlier said, the New York City Police Department knows really how to do this stuff, right? So they do parades in the UN General Assembly and everything else. But maybe that was you. I don't remember who I was talking to. Anyway,
it might have been.
Might have been you. But Miami, right, is a different situation. Obviously, they'll have to block off streets and everything else. It'll be Miami-Dade police, and I assume that if there's sheriff of Miami-Dade, Secret Service is involved, the FBI will be involved. But someplace there's going to be like a demonstration area, right? They always set aside, they call it a free speech, First Amendment area.
Right.
And, this is, again, to your point, like this isn't New York City, right? This is South Florida, and every Florida man, who can get on I-95, who's really fired up might show up.
Let's also not forget, where's the highest concentration of Proud Boys in the world? Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach. They are all down there. That's where they're essentially based. That's where Terrio lives. All these people are down there. Roger Stone will be pulling a full fuckery system. Charlie Kirk last night from TPUSA issued this demand, this blackmail, fatwa, yes, to all Republican candidates, unless you're in Miami to support Trump on Monday or Tuesday, you're an enemy of the people, and we're gonna go after you. All this stuff, all this craziness right now, is only a preview. And I imagine what happens when there are 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people trying to do a truck parade down the street in front of the courthouse, and they bust through a police barricade. Or they do what happened on January 6th, and Trump says something on Truth Social like, "Save me, my comrades. Save me from the deep state and the Soros prosecutor." What happens? It is, and anybody who says nothing could go wrong, why they would never do something crazy like storm the Capitol and beat police to death. That would never happen. It has, it will, it can.
Yeah, and listen, I just reread this. Everybody should go and either see or read the speech that he gave when he announced in Waco. First, he's announcing in Waco, not They
Not
didn't look at
not in October, but in April,
in
along.
April, the
Yeah,
30th anniversary of
right,
Branch Davidian. So they didn't go to
To the
Waco because
day.
like they needed to pick up some votes. I mean, what he says there is really a call to insurrection, and saying that he will pardon those who have been convicted of insurrection.
Right.
A pledge of allegiance not to the United States, but to this flag of insurrection. And it really, I mean, I think we've kind of gotten immune to this, like
right,
you read this and it is like this guy is running against the United States government.
right.
And it's extraordinary. And, there's sort of a normalization that the media has done about this.
Well, yeah,
They
and
cover it like, hey, that was a weird speech, but not like
so
that was a declaration of war.
well, yeah, and look, they claim they've never been able to figure it out. They can. The problem is I talked to, I think his name is Andy Campbell, who writes for Huffington Post and wrote a book about the Proud Boys, which was excellent. Which was whenever he interviewed Enrico Tarrio, he said, "I've interviewed Enrico Tarrio. Everything he says is a lie." He quotes him. He goes, "What he just said was a lie." Right.
Right.
Which most media outlets are like, well, we can't write a story like that. But like you could put a disclaimer on the guy lied 10,000 times while in office, right? Documented. But Rick, one thing that, that Stuart alluded to about being against America is that, with these documents themselves, there were boxes marked top secret that are empty, right?
Yep.
No one knows whether or not somebody, used the scan option on a phone or an iPad, right? Like this is the other part too, is like, we don't know what the hell he had in the first place, and we don't know what he did with it.
When we figure out what he had, basically every program in those compartments that are described in those documents should be considered busted out and have to have basically reformat, basically have to restart. Because anything with sources or methods in there, by this point, the Russians or the Chinese know about it most likely. And I just, you got to take that. You can't take that chance. And again, I've told this story 1,000 times. When I worked at the Pentagon, if I took classified top secret SCI documents from my office, shoved them in my backpack, and took them home,
You would
the
have been jailed
FBI
so
would come knock
fast.
on my goddamn door, and right now I would be, I would have been in fucking, Supermax for the last 35 years. And the outrage of this is lost in the craziness of what, where Trump is. Any other person who did this would go to jail.
So, and Stuart, Stuart, let's talk about this too, because we, as we understand it, Mark Meadows testified. They have indicted Trump's valet / personal aide. We don't know who else they've spoken with, right, or who else has testified. The feds are, I always call it the Henry Hill, from Goodfellas thing, right? Which is like, you're going to go to jail. Your wife's going to go to jail. You're never going to see your kids again, right? Now that doesn't work on Trump because he doesn't care if he sees any of them again anyway, but it very well could work on Mark Meadows, who doesn't want to be a federal inmate, on the valet, who doesn't want to be a federal, like they don't get the Pablo Escobar treatment, right? If they're convicted, they're going to go to real live, federal jail. And that's not a great place for anybody.
Yeah. When you think about it, guys, what we're talking about are documents that Trump took from the White House. Think about 4 years of Trump in the White House.
Right.
How cavalier he was with this stuff. How he loved to think about that picture of him with the Russians, there in the Oval Office.
He once tweeted out a satellite photo, I think, of Iran that was like, and the intelligence community went bananas because they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Can you please? And by the way, that picture still had all of the time, elevation, azimuth, and focal length markings on it to tell you exactly what the overhead, where that satellite was at that particular time. Now it's fucking useless. Now they're
right,
know,
and as Bertilla says here in the comments, he also inadvertently gave away sources and methods of the Israelis, right? So
and the Germans at one point as well. So
this guy was an ongoing threat, and yet Republicans still supported it. And all these Republicans knew
every single
they
one
all
of them
knew he was batshit crazy.
And it's guys. It's like I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. We keep saying it to people that Donald Trump is not what you think he is if you're a Republican. He's a guy who despises his own base. He's a guy who is there merely for power and to make money. He has sold this country out time and again when he was president. What do you think is going to happen when he gets to be president a second time? He is going to let Jared go out into the world once again and go out and put a for sale sign on the White House. The corruption and the evil are locked together. And if people don't understand it by now on the Republican side, you can't save them.
Well, where is Jared, by the way? Right?
Yeah.
That's a fine question.
Where is Jared?
Yeah.
Is Jared in a country without extradition? I mean,
right?
We've seen
like,
a lot of pictures of Jared and Ivanka in foreign countries, right?
We're going to be spending a lot more time in the kingdom.
In Riyadh, yes.
Yes.
But I mean, I think, Stuart, that's right, which is to extend on Rick's point for a second, is all of the people that you mentioned about what's going on in the White House, the Russians, the Chinese, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Iranians, the North Koreans, like, they want him back, right? They want him back, and they'll do just about anything. And he was happy to give them whatever it is they wanted if he was there, if they were there for him, which again is a bargain.
Right.
So riddle me this, guys. As you all know, from being involved in presidential races, once you're the de facto nominee, there is a tradition that you will start getting classified briefings.
There is indeed.
So I remember
it happens the day after you win the nomination at the convention was the first briefing.
And in 2016, there was a lot of, well, should this happen or not happen? I kind of got the sense that they were giving him a briefing, but not really giving him like very much. But how do you give somebody who is on trial for espionage secrets about the United States?
Well, here's what I would do. He has to be in the room by himself, and you give him a notebook of about 250 pages, single space, and about 8-point font. Right?
Yeah.
You give him
a number 4 pencil, the big thick one.
It doesn't have any pictures. Right.
Right.
But Stuart, to your point about presidential campaigns, okay, so now, we are 9 weeks away from the first debate in Milwaukee for Republicans. They have to sign a pledge to get, amongst some other requirements. Mm-hmm. But Stuart, put yourself in the position here, and I know it'll take a little bit of gymnastics here. Like, what do you do with a candidate in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina or on a debate stage where this is going to come up? It's going to be the center of attention. I can't even imagine, what are you going to do? Say like, oh, well, I want to be the Republican nominee. I want to be president. But what President Trump did was fine. That's all good.
Yeah, look, I think we all agree with this, that if you want to beat Trump, you have to attack Trump. I mean, which even just saying that, it's sort of like saying, if you want to win the Super Bowl, you have to score.
Right. I mean, you have to actually go play football.
Go play football. It's actually not just sort of say that, well, I really wish the other guy would lose. Right. So, I mean, it's ridiculous to say this, but they won't do it, except for Christie will. And I think Asa Hutchins is getting close to it. But, there is what I would try to do if I was working for one of these candidates. And I have tried this before, and I've had 100% failure rate. So take that little caveat. I would try to organize alternative debates. Mm-hmm. I would try to get everybody together and to say, we're not going to get on the stage with Donald Trump because we have to sign something with Donald Trump to say that we'll support him. We're not going to support him, and we're going to have our own. And, look, there's nothing. This is why nothing about the debate commission is in any sort of legal document. It's just a tradition. Right. It's goodwill. And we found out that goodwill is, not worth a lot these days. So that could happen. I tried in 12 when we had 19 Republican debates to get everybody together and say, look, this is insane.
Right.
One day in New Hampshire, remember, Reed, we had one at like 8 in the morning, like a meet the president. We had one in the afternoon.
Well, and as you know, too, in that case, too, for folks that haven't been on a primary campaign, what happens is as the debate schedule ramps up, the entire campaign basically gets subsumed to preparing for that stuff. Yeah, and really nothing else happens.
Right. It's audience placement and debate prep. Yeah. And the whole campaign just goes like right into that rabbit hole.
Right.
Yeah.
And so guys, let's do this. We've talked a lot about Donald Trump. We've talked a lot about, these faithless Republicans. What we haven't spent a lot of time talking about is individual Americans and how this affects them. So Rick, what's your sense of it? I mean, what does the individual American have to worry about based on what we're seeing here?
I think they have to worry about three major things. The first is the threat of violence around Trump and his people as these legal cases go on. They're going to get more desperate and sweaty and nervous that something's going to hit him, that's going to actually do damage. Americans should be thinking about that. They should be concerned about that, because the contempt for the rule of law that they've conditioned their audience to since the beginning of 2016 has spread now all the way through Republicans' view of the legal system. So it's not just the DOJ that's corrupt. It's also the U.S. Marshals Service, who would have to arrest the guy. It's also the cops on the street who are trying to keep them away from going to see their idol. It's all these things where they've devalued the rule of law and the legal system so far with the minds of MAGA voters that they live in a lawless place in their minds now. I think that's one concern. The second concern is that there's no way out anymore for the normie Republicans, the moderate Republicans, the good guy Republicans, whatever you want to call it, who really desperately try to pretend that they exist. Nancy Mace is held up as this example of, she's a regular Republican. She's not crazy. And yet last night she's out talking about the deep state Soros prosecutors after Donald Trump. So I think that you're going to see a Republican Party under even more stress and tension. And unfortunately, there's nothing left inside the GOP. There's no Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney or Joe Walsh or anybody else who can put a speed brake on the party's descent into pure Trumpism and purely dedicating itself as Trump's personality cult. And the last thing they should be worried about is the bullshit tornado that's going to come out of the House of Representatives and the MAGA media world, claiming that Joe Biden is some sort of international criminal. And they're really working hard to do that, to pollute the whole message. And that makes it more important than ever that Democrats get behind Joe Biden, solidify immediately behind Joe Biden. The Democratic Party needs to say, tomorrow, Joe Biden is our nominee. We're going to go through the motions of these primaries, but he's our nominee. RFK is never going on a debate stage with him. Moonbeam Marianne Williamson is never going on a debate stage. We're not playing your games. We're not playing your bullshit. We are going to stand up because it's Joe Biden versus the authoritarian tidal wave. And unless you guys are with him now, fuck off, move on, go join some independent movement, because right now Joe Biden needs a unified Democratic Party. I'm afraid people don't get that yet.
Stu, how about you?
Look, if I was inside the White House in Biden's campaign, I would just run as if this hadn't happened. I would run on his achievements, and I'd run on the economy. You don't have to go out there. I mean, look at that jobs report that just came down the pike was extraordinary.
Amazing.
You've got big stuff that they've done, so you don't have to engage Trump on that. So let Trump be out there fighting the fact that he's been indicted, and you try to stay focused, because that works in so many ways. First of all, Biden will be more comfortable again. What is a candidate's good for? Biden's not a guy that's going to, he's not very good at this stuff. Probably to his credit. And, I just think that, I think we all agree, there's just a tremendous undervaluation of what Biden has gotten done. And, the only way that's going to change is if they take a couple of 3 talking points and examples and just ram those home between now and the election. So that's what I would do. I would exist in a different universe that's focused on performance and not this chaos, and be the alternative by example.
Well, and I'm going to go back to something Rick said about the U.S. House of Representatives, which is Kevin McCarthy had to cut a deal with the White House and Democrats to get a debt deal done a couple of weeks ago. Right now, we've all forgotten about that. What we have coming down the pike in the next 5 or 6 months is that at some point they're going to have to pass bills to fund the government. We've already seen that the Taliban 20 are taking their revenge on McCarthy by not letting anything go through the House. And now McCarthy will be stuck with them again. So by the end of September, you very well could see that the ancillary outcome of this is that the MAGAs are in a block, right? They're all they're all spewing seditionist stuff, but they shut the government down too and say, we're not funding a government that is taking on Donald Trump or is part of the Biden crime family. And then that hurts the seniors, folks on Medicaid, veterans, anybody, the national security, the government itself. And so, we shouldn't underestimate anything. And I think, Rick, as you said, and this is something, guys, we started saying 3 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long. When people would ask, about 2020, we would say the 2020 is an election. The 2020 election isn't over on November 4th or whatever day it was. Right. It wasn't over until Joe Biden took the oath of office on January 20th, 2021. Right. This election isn't over until Joe Biden takes the oath of office on January 20th, 2025. Because if you don't think that they will do what they did again on January 6th, to Rick's point, you haven't been paying attention. And I think, Stuart, you're absolutely right, which is, when everybody, to keep your head when everyone else is losing theirs, right?
There's a question here. Does Trump still receive security briefs as an ex-president? I think, right, guys, that Biden said that he wasn't doing that.
I think Biden cut it off. I think Biden cut it off. It's not a law. It's a courtesy.
Yeah, and I think Biden just said, we're not going to do that shit because, the guy's
fuck off.
Something else to save. There was also a question we didn't address about the judge that's been appointed, Judge Cannon. George Vance is saying she has a lot of confidence that either she'll recuse herself, which would be the best thing for her own reputation, or the DOJ will appeal and win. So basically,
right.
I know nothing about this, but she knows a lot, and other people are saying the same thing. Don't panic about that.
Right. I mean, look, there's going to be plenty that is panic worthy, but do not panic, right? But as Stuart likes to say, as we close here, guys, the thing that's been most dangerous for all of us is just a collective lack of imagination, right? So This is the beginning of a process, yes, a court process, but also, a political process. This is all an aberration, right? None of us have ever been through this. We don't know how it's going to go. So, Rick, as we close out, give us one parting thought.
One parting thought is that don't exhaust yourselves on every little detail of the comings and goings the next few days. The media is going to flood the zone. Nothing's really going to happen until after Tuesday. You're going to see a lot of news that day, but this will be a longer process. So it's a marathon, not a sprint, folks.
Stu, how about you?
Look, I think it's real important that we don't kind of dumb down deviancy here. If Trump is being charged with something involving the Espionage Act. So, I mean, we're in Alder James territory, Hansen territory.
Yep.
Pelton,
Walker.
This is what people who are traitors do. And we're talking about a former president of the United States. So you can just imagine the discussion. Are we going to charge a former president of the United States for a violation of the Espionage Act? And you don't do that unless there's like really serious stuff here. So I think that there's a great danger in sort of getting used to this and kind of, it's just another, it's like the Stormy Daniels charge. Well, it's not like the Stormy Daniels charge. It's not a case about business records you falsified. It's not an FEC violation. It is about endangering the security of the United States and could have life and death consequences. I mean, Ricky worked at DOD. For people in the field defending, that every day wake up defending the United States in ways we can't imagine. So I just think it's really important that we keep that paramount in our thoughts.
No, I think that's absolutely right. 100%. And as as anybody is, and many of you probably know, they're at the CIA's headquarters in Langley. There is a wall of stars, and those are the men and women who have lost their lives in service to this country. And I think that the idea that there might be stars on that wall because of something that Donald Trump did means that he shouldn't be allowed to visit the White House, let alone ever serve there again. All right, Rick Wilson, thanks as always. Guys, tune into the enemies list. Stuart Stevens, thanks for joining me, guys. Check out the Lincoln Project podcast. We will be back for our regularly scheduled program Tuesday night. Until then, everybody have a good and safe weekend, and we'll see you soon.
See you, folks.
Bye-bye.